Tales of Herding Gods, Episode 40.
Interpreting the classic original work.
Savoring the fate of its characters.
Hello, everyone.
I'm your Guaman creator, Feitian Xian Hong. Fellow Taoists who like Mu Shen Ji, please give us lots of likes and support us with coins. As our story last left off, Qin Mu sent the head examiner of the Imperial College flying. Then, Emperor Yanfeng and the Young Patriarch made their appearance. Emperor Yanfeng was very curious to know which young scholar was so domineering, so he summoned Qin Mu and the others. Qin Mu took a step forward and raised his head to face the emperor directly. Emperor Yanfeng appeared rather amiable. He wore a yellow dragon robe with a red, gold, and jade-inlaid belt around his waist. His face was a little chubby, his brow was broad, and he had a high-bridged nose. He had a 4-stranded mustache, with 2 strands on his upper lip and 2 strands on his lower lip. Emperor Yanfeng curiously sized Qin Mu up. He smiled and said, "So young. To have such strength is truly remarkable. Where are you from?" Qin Mu bowed. He was about to say he was from Lizhou Prefecture, but suddenly changed his mind. He answered honestly, "Your subject is from the Great Ruins." As soon as he finished speaking, a young general suddenly stepped out from the ranks of officials. He bowed and said, "Your Majesty, please order the arrest of this man. He is one of the abandoned people of the Great Ruins." At these words, the entire hall erupted in an uproar. Qin Mu looked toward the voice, feeling a little uneasy. He saw that the young general was none other than Qin Feiyue, young General Qin. Qin Feiyue was certainly no stranger to him. The two had met more than once and had even chatted in an inn in Xianglong City. Qin Feiyue knew some of his background. Just then an old official beside the emperor whispered, "Your Majesty, this young man is the divine physician Huaxiong that Imperial Inspector Qin found." This was essentially speaking up for Qin Mu, with the implication being, this is the person who is to treat the Empress Dowager. He cannot be killed for now. Emperor Yanfeng was startled, then smiled. Divine physician Huaxiong is so young?
Young General Qin, stand down.
The man has already said he is from the Great Ruins. Why are you making such a fuss? Qin Feiyue argued loudly, "Your Majesty, this man's origins are suspicious, and he is connected to the Heavenly Devil cult. I implore your Majesty to investigate clearly." Emperor Yanfeng frowned slightly.
The Heavenly Devil cult?
That is also a sect under my rule. They are also my subjects.
You want me to arrest my own subject?
How then am I to rule the Heavenly Devil cult? Qin Feiyue still wanted to argue, but Emperor Yanfeng's expression darkened slightly. He waved his hand and said, "Step back. Among my court officials are the elites from various sects and schools. If we are talking about origins, half of them are from demonic cults and demonic paths."
Young General Qin, you have gone too far.
Qin Feiyue had no choice but to step back. Emperor Yanfeng glanced at Qin Mu. He smiled, "Under the whole heaven, every spot is the sovereign's ground. To the borders of the land, every individual is the sovereign's subject. My empire is not just Yenkong. Subjects from the Great Ruins are also my subjects."
Are you a disciple of the Heavenly Devil cult?
Qin Mu bowed and said, "Yes."
Emperor Yanfeng looked artily.
He looked around at his civil and military officials and said, "The Heavenly Devil cult has always been elusive. But now, its disciples have entered the Imperial College to study. Grand Libationer, your contribution is immense." Even Emperor Yanfeng knew that the Grand Libationer of the Imperial College, recommended by the Imperial Preceptor, was none other than the Young Patriarch of the Heavenly Devil cult. But neither the Imperial Preceptor of Yenkong nor His Majesty Emperor Yanfeng himself cared. This was because while the Yenkong reform was led on the surface by the Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yanfeng, the Young Patriarch was actually behind the scenes. The Young Patriarch bowed and said, "It is due to your Majesty's boundless fortune." An official to the side said, "Your Majesty, this boy might be one of the abandoned people." Abandoned people? Emperor Yanfeng was unconcerned. He said leisurely, "Abandoned by the gods, but not necessarily abandoned by me. The gods may abandon the living, but I cannot abandon the living. Once they are in my land, regardless of their origin, they are all my people. How can there be any abandoned people?" An old official stepped forward, bowed, and said, "But your Majesty, sects have been causing trouble recently. Your subject fears that the heavenly devil cult is also stirring. What if this boy is a spy from the heavenly devil cult? Emperor Yanfeng also had a bit of a headache. He sneered, these martial world sects, always trying to stir up big trouble to scare me. Nominally, they oppose the imperial preceptor, but in reality, they oppose me. Trying to make me move my butt, so their butts can sit on the dragon throne. It's just wishful thinking. In the past, the nation was a vassal of the sections. The sects decided who would be emperor. These sects leeched off the nation, leeched off the common people. Any emperor who didn't suit their wishes would be replaced or killed. But times have changed. The sects can only be vassals of the nation. As he spoke, something seemed to strike a chord with him. He suddenly stood up. Continuing with some agitation, he said, the imperial preceptor and I pushed for reform precisely to change the situation where sects control the lifeblood of the people and the lifeblood of the nation.
Not only do you want reform, you want a révolution.
A revolution against these sections.
A révolution against mes elfes.
If these sects don't want to reform, then they can wait for me to revolutionize them. The resources controlled by these sects will all be nationalized.
Don't even think about controlling me again.
Not only must the sects change, the court must also change. If the court doesn't change, it will be doomed sooner or later. You all say the imperial preceptor is radical. The imperial preceptor is not as radical as I am. Everything the imperial preceptor does is at my instruction. Opposing the imperial preceptor is opposing me. The entire Imperial College was deathly silent, not a single sound could be heard. Emperor Yanfeng was clearly speaking from the heart. He wanted to take this opportunity to awe his sovereign and ministers, and also to unite their hearts and make them one. After a moment, Emperor Yanfeng smiled and sat down again. I have lost my composure.
Grand libationné, bring the register.
Daoist Lingyun hurriedly came forward holding the register. Emperor Yanfeng picked up the vermilion brush and wrote a few words after Qin Mu's name. He said, from now on, he is a disciple of the Son of Heaven. With that, he closed the register and handed it back to Daoist Lingyun. Congratulations to Qin Mu, who in a flash became a disciple of the Son of Heaven. After this, no one should be able to use his status as one of the abandoned people of the great ruins against him. Next, the examinations for the many scholars continued. A few people who had not yet finished the exam also took the unified test in front of the Imperial College Hall, still presided over by Daoist Lingyun. Even if Daoist Lingyun wanted to go easy on the children of those high officials and nobles, there was nothing he could do. After all, those present were all sharp-eyed experts. If he tried any tricks, they would be seen through. The great examination finally concluded in the afternoon. Some were joyous, while others were dejected. Especially for the university scholars, the competition was even more cruel and harsh. To be able to enter the Imperial College was to be 1 in 100. There were only 5 spots left for the primary scholars. Those from prestigious families, after all, were more extensively learned, surpassing the disciples from humble backgrounds. Among the 5 who passed, only Si Yunxiang successfully passed the great examination to become an Imperial College scholar. The other 4 were all from prestigious and noble families. It's not that the scholars from humble backgrounds didn't work hard, but they were limited by resources. To put it simply, not a single true scholar from a humble background made it in, because Qin Mu and Si Yunxiang were actually also from well-off families. The primary and university schools taught the same martial arts, spells, and sword techniques. Even if practiced to perfection, one could not overcome this divide. But the prestigious families, besides practicing what was taught in the schools, also had their own family, ancestral, and sect-passed secret techniques. They also had experts at home to guide them. Therefore, the proportion of successful scholars from humble backgrounds was not high. Speaking of which, doesn't that sound like today's private tutors and cram schools? Qin Mu took this all in, thinking, if this continues, I'm afraid the upper echelons of Yenkong Kingdom will be controlled by the forces of prestigious families and sections. Disciples from humble backgrounds will never have a chance to rise or hold high positions in the court. In that case, the nation will surely not last long. Emperor Yanfeng has the will for reform, but I wonder if he can change this situation. After the examination ended, the Grand Libationer arranged for residences. All who became Imperial College scholars were given their own separate residence in the Imperial College. This area was called the scholars' residence, the place where the scholars lived. Each scholar had a two-courtyard compound. The Imperial College scholars lived in their respective residences, which were fully equipped. There were also servants to help with chores, cooking and laundry, so the scholars wouldn't have to worry about daily trifles. If they were from prominent families, they could even bring their own servants or maids. Qin Mu also wanted to find time to bring Hu Linger over. Just as he was looking around, an aged voice suddenly came from behind him.
Young Cult Master, you veux comme on le dit souhait.
How do you feel now that you're here? Qin Mu turned, bowed in greeting and said, Patriarch. The visitor was indeed the young patriarch. Although he had the appearance of a youth, his voice was ancient. He smiled and said, no need for formalities. Qin Mu said, on my journey here, seeing the state of Yanfeng Kingdom had a great impact on me. My heart is quite unsettled. The young patriarch started walking and asked Qin Mu to elaborate. Qin Mu kept pace with him, talking as they walked. He said that on his way, he saw that Yanfeng Kingdom was prosperous because many Taoist arts and divine powers were being used for the daily life of the people. Although Yanfeng Kingdom was experiencing some turmoil, it wouldn't last long. After that, it would become incomparably powerful. The young patriarch led him to a lake on the mountain. Standing by the water, he asked, between sex and the state, which do you think has a better future? From what you've said, it seems you believe that sex cannot rival the state. Qin Mu nodded. The primary schools, university schools, and the Imperial College have established that Yanfeng Kingdom is the greatest sect under heaven. Other sects are merely its primary schools and university schools, merely providing it with scholars. How can these sects possibly contend with Yanfeng?
The Young Patriarch sat down under a willow tree.
There were 2 fishing rods on the bank. He gave one to Qin Mu and kept one for himself. He cast his line into the water and said with a smile, but the world is in chaos now. Many sects are taking the opportunity to rebel, and the unrest is spreading like wildfire. In addition, the Imperial Preceptor of Yanfeng is severely injured. I see Yanfeng Kingdom is in imminent danger and could fall at any moment. It was clear that this was the young patriarch testing Qin Mu. This conversation would be the key to determining Qin Mu's ascension as the heavenly devil cult master. Qin Mu also cast his fishing line. As the lure hit the water, he said, Patriarch, you are testing me, aren't you? The Imperial Preceptor of Yanfeng is merely playing a game of to catch something, first let it go. He wants to take the opportunity to wipe out all opposing forces in the world in one fell swoop. This much is obvious to me, and naturally, it's obvious to you as well. The young patriarch said, it's more than just a feint. You've forgotten the self-injury ruse. The Imperial Preceptor of Yanfeng is indeed severely injured. His wounds are very grave, otherwise, he couldn't have fooled all the sects in the world. When Qin Mu heard self-injury ruse, he thought the Imperial Preceptor had harmed himself. The young patriarch shook his head. The ones who attacked him were others. It said that 3 old monsters from my own era attacked him together, severely wounding him. I saw him after he returned to the capital. His injuries are indeed very serious. Qin Mu was stunned. He had always thought that the Imperial Preceptor of Yanfeng was using the tactic of feigning retreat to lure the enemy, baiting the opposing forces to make a move. He never expected the Imperial Preceptor to be genuinely injured. Clearly, Qin Mu's thinking was a bit too simple. If it were really as he had said, how could the sects of the world be so easily fooled? The young patriarch said he was turning the plot to his advantage, wanting to draw these people out. If these sects thought that just like that, they could eliminate the Imperial Preceptor of Yanfeng and destroy Yanfeng Kingdom, they were in for a world of hurt. Young Cult Master, what are your thoughts on the Imperial Preceptor of Yanfeng? Qin Mu said solemnly, a hero among men, broad-minded, a talent of a generation. The young patriarch smiled. When he came to me seeking the Tao back then, I thought so too. I originally wanted to take him as a disciple, but his talent and learning were so vast, he was already showing signs of surpassing me. So I gave up that idea, so as not to hinder his future. So since Yanfeng Kingdom is above all the sects, schools and factions of the world and cannot be surpassed, and the Imperial Preceptor of Yanfeng is a peerless talent, how should our sacred cult conduct itself? The questions posed by the young patriarch were deep and difficult. After a moment of contemplation, Qin Mu replied, our sacred cult has 2 paths. One path is to establish a nation for the cult, to make the sacred cult into a nation. To establish a nation, the sacred cult must stay far away from Yanfeng. The fortune of Yanfeng Kingdom is becoming increasingly prosperous. After the Imperial Preceptor quells the unrest, he will inevitably wage war abroad. We cannot compete with Yanfeng Kingdom within its borders. Being too close, we also cannot compete with Yanfeng Kingdom. But if we move far away from Yanfeng, the foundation of our sacred cult will be lost. I'm afraid it will be difficult to make any progress for decades. The young patriarch nodded. The first path is extremely difficult. Our sacred cult is rooted in the world, in the people. Leaving Yanfeng would mean uprooting our foundation. This path is not feasible. What about the second path? Qin Mu said, the second path is to submit. The sacred cult submits to Yanfeng Kingdom. The young patriarch's expression changed slightly. He sneered, you, as cult master, want to destroy our sacred cult? You have some nerve. I'm going to take your head. This last sentence was Emperor Yanfeng's catchphrase, and the young patriarch said it deliberately. Qin Mu calmly said, Patriarch, you don't have that intention. The young patriarch was silent for a moment. He said, I'll spare your head.
Keep it on your neck. Continue.
Qin Mu continued, I have observed the actions of the Imperial Preceptor of Yanfeng. They align with the teachings of our sacred cult. Both are the way of the sage, for the use of the people. If our sacred cult submits to Yanfeng Kingdom, not only will we not decline like other sects, we can even develop and grow. That is the first point. Secondly, the Imperial Preceptor's primary, university, and Imperial Colleges have a flaw, and a very large one at that. This flaw is not apparent in the short term, but in 200 or 300 years, it will become clear. The young patriarch asked, wherein lies the flaw? Qin Mu asked in return, may I ask, Patriarch, what percentage of the scholars in the Imperial College are from poor families? The young patriarch smiled. He clearly knew what Qin Mu was going to say. He replied, 1%. Qin Mu then asked, in recent years, of the young officials in Yanfeng Kingdom, what percentage are from the Imperial College? The young patriarch replied, 70% are from the Imperial College. The other older officials are from the major sections. Some of them climbed up step by step. Qin Mu said, based on my deduction, in 200 years, all the officials in the world will be from the Imperial College. And among the scholars in the Imperial College, not even 1 in 100 will be from a humble background. In 200 years, the children of humble backgrounds will remain poor their entire lives, while the children of the wealthy will remain wealthy their entire lives. The resentment of the people will accumulate and inevitably erupt. The wealthy and noble families will take the opportunity to rise up and overthrow the court. That will be the time for our sacred cult to unify the world. The great tide of history will be unstoppable, unavoidable. The young patriarch sneered. You want to rebel, and put our sacred cult in a position of disloyalty? I'm going to take your head. Qin Mu was silent for a moment, then said, Patriarch, stop teasing. Haha, even Qin Mu could tell that the young patriarch's words were too fake and ridiculous. The young patriarch was also speechless. He just wanted to get Qin Mu used to Emperor Yanfeng's catchphrase in advance. But obviously, the effect wasn't very good. The young patriarch smiled faintly. He had a fish on the hook, but it was a small one that he flicked up with a single pull.
All right, back to business.
In 200 years, you will have turned the sacred cult into another Yanfeng kingdom. What then? A great war baptizes it, destroying the original noble families and great factions. Then, 200 years later, new noble families and great factions will form. Someone else will come to overthrow the rule of our sacred cult. How will you solve this? Qin Mu was stunned and shook his head. I haven't considered what will happen 200 years from now. I ask for the patriarch's guidance. The young patriarch broke off a willow branch and strung the fish on it. He stood up. I also cannot see what will happen 200 years from now. Young cult master, for you to be able to see 200 years ahead at such a young age, you are already a qualified cult master. You have passed. My thinking is somewhat different from yours. What I am thinking of is the teachings of our sacred cult. Qin Mu's heart trembled. He looked at this young-looking old man. The young patriarch said leisurely, "The way of the sage is nothing other than the daily use of the people. Those who act willfully betray it, those who act in accordance with their nature, pure and natural, have not yet realized the Tao." When the imperial preceptor of Yanfeng rose, I perceived his lofty ambitions.
Et qu'aimes-tu me seeking the Dao?
I told him this sentence from the great educational heavenly devil scripture. What he is doing now is precisely this sentence. Qin Mu's spirit was shaken. He bowed. "Patriarch, your insight is already that of a sage. You want to subtly transform Yanfeng Kingdom into the sacred cult. If Yanfeng Kingdom achieves the way of the sage, then Yanfeng Kingdom is the heavenly sacred cult." The young patriarch shook his head and said, "Neither Yanfeng Kingdom nor its imperial preceptor can achieve the way of the sage. I can't either. As you said, the world and its resources, in 200 years, will all be controlled by the noble families and great factions.
The poor will grow poorer, and the rich, richer.
This is not the way of the sage of our heavenly sacred cult. I wanted to influence the affairs of Yanfeng Kingdom, to influence the kingdom itself, but it seems now that I have failed. I am old.
This burden now falls to you.
What I can do to help is to hold the fort for you for a few years." Simply put, the current flaw in Yanfeng Kingdom is essentially a historical problem left by the young patriarch. He didn't have time to solve it, so it can only be solved by Qin Mu. The young patriarch carried the fish. With the fishing rod on his back, Qin Mu followed behind him.
The old man found a mountain hollow.
Then, in this supreme sacred place in the minds of everyone in Yanfeng Kingdom, he set up a pot. He added water and started a fire. He scaled and gutted the fish and threw it into the pot. The young patriarch looked at the water in the pot. He took out some seasonings from his sleeve and sprinkled them into the pot. "In a few more months, I will resign from my post as Grand Libationer. I am old. I want to spend these last few years traveling. There are many places in this world I haven't been to yet. The sacred cult will be handed over to you. After resigning, I will preside over an enthronement ceremony. I want to personally watch you become the cult master of the sacred cult." Qin Mu was a bit troubled. "I'm currently only at the Five Luminaries Realm. Isn't it a bit early for me to take over the sacred cult now? It will be hard to command respect." The young patriarch gestured for him to sit. Qin Mu sat cross-legged in front of the pot just like him, smelling the fragrant fish soup. The young patriarch said, "The sacred cult is actually quite decentralized.
The Hall Master of the 360 Halls are scattered all over.
The followers are spread throughout Yanfeng. Even the elders and heavenly kings are rarely all together. You can very well be a hands-off cult master. If things really get bad, am I not still alive?
Allons à live, no one will dare touch you.
Not even the imperial preceptor of Yanfeng will dare to touch you." Qin Mu's heart stirred. He tentatively asked, "The imperial preceptor of Yanfeng must want to control me, and the sacred cult, right?" "Of course, he does. But you can put him at ease." The young patriarch tasted the fish soup. He felt it wasn't ready yet. He continued to add firewood and said, "You have to know you are young, and your cultivation is low. He won't take you seriously yet. He will feel that he can control you. If he can achieve the way of the sage, there's nothing wrong with letting him control you and the sacred cult. If he cannot, you will replace him." He said it as if it were a trivial matter. And yet, this matter was the great affair of changing a dynasty. Qin Mu said, "Patriarch, is the great educational heavenly devil scripture missing a cultivation technique? I've been contemplating it during my journey. I haven't found a technique in the great educational heavenly devil scripture that can unify all the other methods." The young patriarch reached out and grabbed at the air. From nowhere, he produced 2 bowls and spoons. Qin Mu took the bowl and spoon and started to ladle the soup. The spell the young patriarch just used by grabbing the air is recorded in the great educational heavenly devil scripture. It's called ghostly transportation art. It can steal things from afar without anyone noticing. The young patriarch said, "The great educational heavenly devil scripture's grand unifying technique is only passed to the cult master. It is passed down from one cult master to the next. The other contents of the scripture can be spread, but the grand unifying technique can only be cultivated by the cult master. When you are enthroned as the new cult master, Li Tianqing will pass it to you." Qin Mu was startled. The previous cult master, Isn't Li Tianqing already dead? From the young patriarch's tone, it sounded as if Li Tianqing was still alive.
Qin Mu drank the fish soup.
He found it more and more delicious. He quickly asked, Patriarch, what kind of fish is this? The young patriarch said, the qi of the 9 dragons gathers here, forming this lake. This fish absorbed the dragon qi, so it's called the 9 dragons carp. This kind of fish is all hard bones with little meat, so it's only good for making soup. But the soup it makes is exceptionally delicious. Qin Mu was pensive. Does the patriarch mean for me to be a person with hard bones, a 9 dragons carp? The young patriarch glared at him. You're overthinking it. What's wrong with being a person? Why would you want to be a fish? Do you want to be made into soup by someone? I was just craving some, so I brought you here for fish soup, that's all. Haha, hearing this, all those who speak cryptically and make you think it's profound, it seems they're all just fooling people. Qin Mu was extremely embarrassed. It seems the old man really was just craving some food. He just wanted to drink some fish soup. The two sat there, slowly drinking the fish soup, enjoying it very much. Afterward, Qin Mu asked the patriarch about the Overlord Body 3 elixir gong technique. The young patriarch said, I didn't know it was called the Overlord Body 3 elixir gong. It seems that old fellow, the village chief, is more knowledgeable. The remnant diagram in the Qingliang Hall, I saw it in some ancient ruins. In the end, the young patriarch combined the remnant diagram he had seen with the one Qin Mu saw in Jinyang Palace, merging them to complete it. But there will be a slight flaw at the left collarbone. Qin Mu asked, Patriarch, how high must an opponent's insight be to see through this flaw? The young patriarch said, the heavenly human or life and death realms. Qin Mu laughed and said, such powerful experts, why would I ever go and provoke them? The young patriarch said calmly, there are some young people who, although not high in realm, have very high insight. For example, there are such young people in the Imperial College. You shouldn't think too highly of yourself. This is no longer an era where you can dominate just by relying on 1 or 2 techniques passed down from your ancestors. If one's Taoist arts and divine powers do not progress, and one only relies on those couple of tricks from the ancestors, sooner or later, you'll be eliminated by others. Do you know why I became the Grand Libationer of the Imperial College? I did it to study all the knowledge under heaven, to witness a new era. There was a trace of sadness in his eyes. He whispered, unfortunately, I'm afraid I won't be able to see it. Although he had come to terms with life and death, he wasn't sad about his impending death. But he was saddened that he couldn't witness a new era's arrival, because this new era was one he had single-handedly pushed for. It doesn't matter if I can't see it. The young patriarch's spirits lifted. He smiled and said, but you can see it. Young cult master, don't be complacent.
Your horizon must be broad. Your hat must be broad.
Qin Mu took his leave of the young patriarch. The impression this old man left on him was different from the others in the village. The villagers of disabled elderly village gave the impression of a group of old kind gentlemen. Although they were all fierce and menacing, after getting to know them, he found they were actually very kind. They taught Qin Mu how to be a good person, and they taught him the means to survive. But the young patriarch didn't teach him these things. The young patriarch used a method of gentle and systematic guidance, making him stand on higher ground to look at this world. When you stand at a different height, the world you see is also different. To become the sacred cult master of the heavenly devil cult, one must have a vision that spans 1,000 miles. For Qin Mu, the most practical gain this time was the Five Luminaries Realm circulation diagram for the Overlord Body 3 elixir gong. With this diagram, he could continue to cultivate. Otherwise, his cultivation would be stuck at the Five Luminaries Realm, unable to advance an inch. He returned to the scholar's residence and tried to activate the Overlord Body 3 elixir gong, circulating his vital qi according to the compiled diagram. The Five Luminaries Realm circulation path of the Overlord Body 3 elixir gong was much more complex than before. It was built on the foundation of the Daoyin Gong and Spirit Embryo Realm techniques, with another layer of technique overlaid. Qin Mu had studied all the techniques in the great educational Heavenly Devil scripture. Although there were many miraculous techniques in the scripture, there were not many that could compare with the Five Luminaries Realm circulation path of the Overlord Body 3 elixir gong. This circulation path was like activating 3 techniques simultaneously, activating the simplest Daoyin Gong drove the Spirit Embryo Realm circulation path, and then the Spirit Embryo Realm drove the Five Luminaries Realm circulation path. It was extremely complex. This time, his vital qi surged forth, circulating according to the diagram. Suddenly, his consciousness split into 5. Together with the surging vital qi, it rushed into the Five Luminaries Divine Treasure.
In the Five Luminary Divine Treasure, the 5 great stars suddenly shone brightly.
But this time, there was no chaos of the 5 elements annihilating each other. Instead, a beam of starlight shot down from the gold luminary star, merging with one part of his consciousness and transforming into a gold god phantom. It had ears hung with 2 snakes, feet stepping on 2 dragons, tiger claws and white fur, and it held a bronze battle axe. Qin Mu carefully circulated his vital qi, letting the gold god phantom continuously absorb the gold luminary starlight. This starlight, called star power, formed the phantom. At the same time, a beam of starlight also shot down from the wood luminary star, merging with another part of his consciousness and transforming into a wood god with human hands, a bird's body and feet, stepping on 2 dragons and holding a willow whip. Starlight also fell from the water luminary star, merging with his third part of consciousness to transform into a water god phantom with human hands, red hair, a snake's body, and holding a trident. The light shooting from the fire luminary star merged with his fourth part of consciousness, transforming into a fire god phantom with a beast's body, a human face, stepping on 2 dragons and holding a fire gourd. The light from the earth luminary star merged with the last part of his consciousness, transforming into an earth god phantom with human hands, a snake's body, and 2 gates on its back. There were characters written on the gates, but because it was a phantom, it was blurry and he couldn't make out what was written. His vital qi merged with the phantoms of the 5 gods. Between the vital qi and star power, they actually began to slowly convert into each other. This situation was baffling. Vital qi converted into star power, and star power converted into vital qi. Qin Mu carefully experienced it but didn't discover anything different. He just felt that when vital qi converted into star power, he could faintly feel some mysterious power stirring in the sky, originating from the stars. He didn't know what specific power it was. And when star power converted into vital qi, he found his cultivation had improved slightly. It wasn't a bad thing. He breathed a complete sigh of relief. Although the Five Luminaries Realm circulation diagram still had a small flaw, at least he could cultivate with it and wouldn't suffer from cultivation deviation at the drop of a hat. There was still some time before classes at the Imperial College began. Qin Mu wanted to go back to Tingyu Pavilion and bring Hu Linger here. He had also promised to continue treating the people of Huaxiong. Qin Mu walked out of his residence and saw a group of scholars walking towards him. The area where he lived was separated from the divine arts practitioners. It was where the Spirit Embryo Realm and Five Luminaries Realm scholars lived. In the Imperial College, all scholars below the 6 Directions Realm lived here. As the Imperial College opened, many scholars from previous years returned from abroad. They had enrolled a few years before Qin Mu and their cultivation was profound, but as long as they hadn't broken through to the 6 Directions Realm, they still lived here. The Imperial College gave 10 spots to primary scholars each year, and for a primary scholar to break through to the 6 Directions Realm within 3 to 5 years was very difficult. Therefore, the number of primary scholars in the Imperial College was not small. These scholars passed by Qin Mu. One of them sized Qin Mu up and said, "Junior brother, I heard an abandoned person from the Great Ruins has come to the college. Do you know where he lives?" Qin Mu was startled. "Senior brother, why are you looking for that abandoned person?" That scholar said, "The abandoned people are lowly folk only fit to be slaves. I can't believe the Emperor actually let an abandoned person become a scholar of our Imperial College. This is an insult to us. We were indignant when we heard about this. We plan to make him know his place and retreat. He shouldn't stay in the Imperial College. If he stays, what face will we have left?" Qin Mu's eyes flickered. "I see. I've seen that abandoned person before. He lives nearby.
Why don't he lead you there?"
The dozen or so scholars were overjoyed. They all bowed and smiled. "Thank you, junior brother." Qin Mu said, "You're too kind, senior brothers. I also come from a prestigious family, a noble and powerful clan. To be classmates with an abandoned person, I'm so ashamed I wish I could dig a hole and crawl into it. By the way, my surname is Qin."
Qin.
The scholars were all surprised. One of them said politely, "So you're a brother from the Qin family." The Qin family of the capital is indeed a renowned and prestigious clan. To be classmates with an abandoned person is truly a stain on your family's name. The Qin family has many loyal generals. The whole family is loyal and righteous. Although I enrolled 2 years before you, I dare not call myself senior brother. We should address each other as brothers. It seemed having a family background made you popular everywhere, except Qin Mu was an imposter. Another scholar smiled and said, "My father runs a mine in Tiger Walk Mountain. Every year, we transport several hundred abandoned people there. We buy them from the border. Several hundred die every year, so we have to keep buying more. To think I would be studying in the same college as an abandoned person. If my father finds out, he will be furious, saying that I'm associating with slaves." A female scholar said, "I also heard about this matter. The emperor took the opportunity to warn the officials, so he let the abandoned person enter the Imperial College. Actually, it also implies an intent to annex the Great Ruins. By acknowledging the abandoned people as subjects of Yanfeng Kingdom, isn't he also acknowledging that the Great Ruins are also the territory of Yanfeng Kingdom? It's just that the emperor was not considerate enough. Placing an abandoned person in the Imperial College, he ignored the feelings of us scholars. As if the emperor needed to consider the feelings of these primary scholars, as if they were the supreme emperor or the empress dowager. Emperor Yanfeng couldn't possibly lower himself to their perspective. Qin Mu and these scholars walked all the way to the end of the scholars' residence. Chatting along the way, they reached a very secluded courtyard, the only one near the end. Qin Mu smiled and said, "Senior brothers, this is where that abandoned person lives."
Ouais, ir un moment.
He went forward and knocked on the door. After a moment, the courtyard door opened, and a round face peeked out. Seeing Qin Mu, he was slightly startled and smiled, "Brother Qin." It was of course the fatty Wei Yong. Qin Mu pushed the door open and went in. Everyone filed in, crowding the wide-bodied scholar into the center of the courtyard. Qin Mu closed the courtyard gate and bolted it. His face was like still water as he said, "By the way, senior brothers, is killing allowed in the Imperial College?" The scholars were all startled. One scholar chuckled and said, "Brother Qin, we just want to teach this abandoned person a lesson and drive him out of the Imperial College. Why the need to kill? If we kill him, we'll all be expelled from the Imperial College. Just beating him up is fine." Qin Mu was a little unhappy. He said sullenly, "So many rules in the capital. You can't even kill people casually. If this were our great ruins, killing a dozen people, nobody would even ask." As soon as these words were spoken, the many scholars in the courtyard all felt something was not quite right. By the time they realized it, it was clearly too late. Next, who was going to be beaten up, was hard to say. So, will Qin Mu get into trouble this time? Find out in the next chapter. For more exciting plot analysis, please continue to follow Feitian Xin Hong. Savoring the fate of its characters.
Mu Shen Ji original auteur, Zejou. Don't go out after dark.
A 3 combo like, share, subscribe guarantees your safety.
Cảm ơn các đạo hữu đã xem hết video. Các đạo hữu like và đăng ký kênh để xem tiếp tập sau nha.